So, what is the curse of knowledge? And how does this impact your communication with the opposite sex when you're trying to date? We're going to talk about all of that, plus answer your questions and more on today's Introvert Dating Success Show. Here we go.
It's the Introvert Dating Success Podcast, the show for introverted men that's all about learning how to attract beautiful women and still get your precious alone time. And now, here's your host, dating coach and fellow introvert, Harry Wilmington.
What up, guys? Welcome to the Introvert Dating Success Show. I'm your host, as always, Harry Wilmington. This is the show where we help you figure out how to date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. So normally I do these shows at 3 o'clock, but I decided to test out doing it at 7 today, just trying to figure out that hot, sweet spot of where it is that most of you guys are watching this show. So for those of you that are watching, I appreciate you greatly. So on today's show, we're going to be talking about something that I've been meaning to talk about for a minute. And it was based on a study that I read like a month or so ago, and then I didn't save it. So I forgot where the study was. And then I thought it was a study that was based on whistling, but it was actually based on tapping. And so it wasn't until like yesterday when I finally typed in this particular thing that the study popped up again, along with other summaries of said study, at which point I was like, oh, great, I can finally do this freaking show. So we're going to be talking about today the curse of knowledge. What is the curse of knowledge? Why is it that once we have a certain knowledge set, that it makes our communication with newer people that aren't privy to our knowledge a lot harder? And how does it show up in relationships in a negative way that ultimately doesn't allow you guys to have the proper connection? Well, I want to get into that because it's very, very important. And I think that when I read the study, I didn't even know that this was a thing that had been studied. But once I saw the study, I was like, oh my God, this literally has everything to do with like why men and women have such bad communication when they're trying to talk to each other or get to know each other's sides. And so for you guys that are watching, I want you to have the best version of communication possible in relationships. And thus, we're going to do this show today. Also, guys, very important, very important. This show is ultimately about you guys. So yes, I have a thing I'm going to talk about, but during the process of that, if you guys have any questions, dating questions that you're going through, or just questions in general that you'd like me to answer on the show, you can leave it in the comments box that is next to this video if you're watching it on YouTube, and I'll be happy to answer it during the course of the show. Also, as always, if you want more help in this kind of stuff, you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com. I got ebooks, audiobooks, programs, coaching materials, all designed to help you date as your introverted self while still getting your alone time, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into this topic because I've been wanting to talk about this for like a month now, and I'm eager to get it out. So we're talking about the curse of knowledge. So for those of you that are watching, I want you to do this. I'm going to tap out a tune, and I want you to guess the tune that I am tapping, all right? Hopefully you can hear it because the microphone's like right up here, okay? So here we go. I'll just clap it actually. Now, can you guess that tune? If you're watching live on the chat box, I'll tap it one more time. See if you can guess the tune that I am tapping. So that's the tune. So if anybody can guess that, let me know. So here's an interesting thing, right? How many times have you been with a woman whereby you think you're about to tell her something that she just automatically will get when you tell it to her, and then she doesn't get it? Or how many times has a woman done something where you're like, why would she do that thing? That doesn't make logical sense. Like, it should be done this way, or she should communicate this way. Like, everybody knows this is the best way to interpret this information or to put out this information, and she's not doing it. What's going on? So there's an interesting phenomenon called the curse of knowledge. And basically, I'm going to read through this definition, right? So the curse of knowledge refers to a cognitive bias that occurs when a person who is knowledgeable about a particular topic or subject finds it difficult to imagine or communicate with others who have less knowledge or understanding of that logic. And so there was a study done back in 1989, and I'm actually going to pull that study up on my thing here. Hold on a second. Let me get to the right page. Here we go. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to pull up this study for you guys real quick. Here we go. All right, so this is the study. And the study goes like this. It says in 1990, Elizabeth Newton earned a PhD in psychology at Stanford by studying a simple game in which she assigned people to one of two roles, tappers or listeners. Now, tappers received a list of 25 well-known songs, such as Happy Birthday to You and The Star-Spangled Banner. Now, each tapper was asked to pick a song and tap out the rhythm to a listener by knocking on a table. The listener's job was to guess the song based on the rhythm being tapped. And I've done this in my home amongst my friends in the past week or so, tapping out random songs to see if they could guess it. It's quite fun to see who can actually like guess the thing you're tapping or clapping and who can't, you know? But anyway, so the experiment goes on. The listener's job in this game is quite difficult. Over the course of Newton's experiment, 120 songs were tapped out. Listeners guessed only 2.5% of the songs, i.e. 3 out of 120. Now, here's what made the results worthy of a dissertation. It says, before the listeners guessed the name of the song, Newton asked the tappers to predict the odds that the listeners would guess correctly. Now, the tappers predicted that the odds were 50%. So, in other words, out of every 2 times, one person would guess the song, right? And it says the tappers got their message across 1 time in 40, but they thought they were getting their message across in 1 out of 2, or 1 time in 2. Why? When a tapper taps, she is hearing the song in her head. So try for yourself at home. So I'll tell you guys for starters what I was tapping out. All right. So you heard this. So for me, what I'm tapping out is MC Hammer's "You Can't Touch This." Can you hear that now? Da-na-na-na, da-na, da-na. Can't touch this. Anyway, so it said, go ahead and try for yourself. Tap out the Star-Spangled Banner. So Star-Spangled Banner is. But if I hadn't told you that it was Star-Spangled Banner, to you, it would probably sound more like Morse code. Like I can't figure out, I'm supposed to determine the song by the length of the clap or how long it stayed or how fast he clapped. Like, I don't know what's going on. It says it's impossible to avoid hearing the tune in your head, right? So when I said, for example, I'm going to clap out "You Can't Touch This," I'm hearing the song in my head. So it's very easy for me to know is "You Can't Touch This" by MC Hammer from 1990. But it says, meanwhile, the listeners can't hear that tune. And more importantly, they haven't been told the tune prior to the clapping or the tapping, right? All they can hear is a bunch of disconnected taps, like a kind of bizarre Morse code. In the experiment, tappers are flabbergasted at how hard the listeners seem to be working to pick up the tune. And they're thinking, isn't the song obvious? The tapper's expressions when a listener guesses "Happy Birthday to You" instead of the Star-Spangled Banner are priceless. How could you be so stupid, right? So it says it's hard to be a tapper. The problem is that tappers have been given knowledge, the song title, that makes it impossible for them to imagine what it's like to lack that knowledge. So when they're tapping, they can't imagine what it's like for the listeners to hear isolated taps rather than an actual song. And thus, the curse of knowledge, which is basically like once we know something, we find it hard to imagine what it was like to not know it. Our knowledge has cursed us, and it becomes difficult for us to share our knowledge with others because we can't readily recreate our listeners' state of mind. So in other words, at the point that you now have the knowledge, it's very hard for us as humans to go back in time and think about a time when we didn't have that knowledge. So fast forward to, you come across a new person, you start doing the clap, clap, claps, and you're in your head like, the clapping is so obvious. Like I'm clapping "Happy Birthday." I'm clapping "You Can't Touch This." They must know what it is because I'm so clear in my communication of what this song is. And they don't have the same knowledge base. They don't have the same thing going on in their head that you have going on in your head when you're clapping it. And so all they're hearing is just taps and claps. And they're thinking, as hard as they want to, I don't actually know what it is you're clapping, you know? So I read that study and I thought, that's so fascinating, but it's fascinating to me because it also shows up in terms of regular day-to-day relationships. Like this experiment really talked about like how this correlates with the job world and how oftentimes like bosses will say, for example, I need you to run these reports, and the employee's version of running the reports might be different than what the boss had in mind. But if the boss doesn't accurately communicate what he actually means when he says run the reports, then there's always going to be a confrontation and a conflict of trying to understand each other, right? So this also very, very, very much, I realize, shows up in actual like relationships when it comes to dating, when it comes to dealing with women, because there are so many guys, for example, that write me talking about how they feel as though they were clearly communicating with a woman and obviously she just didn't get it. Or a woman's doing something or acting in a way that she must know is frustrating to him or is not clear communication, and why can't she do it better? And so examples of how cursive knowledge might show up in your day-to-day relationship life would be, for example, let's say you ask your mate to do a task, right? So you say, hey, honey, I want you to get the car washed. And in your head, you're thinking, well, that means that she needs to go outside and spray it with the hose and then wipe it down. She might, and you're going to assume she must know that that's what you mean when you say wash the car. And she's thinking it means either call somebody to get it washed or drive it through a car wash. And you might, have that back in the day, they had antennas on cars, and sometimes antennas will get ruined in the car wash if you weren't too careful. So you might be thinking, why would she take my car to the car wash? She must know that my car has an antenna, for example, and that it'll get ruined if it goes through a car wash. But she doesn't necessarily have that knowledge that you have about that. So you're going in with the cursive knowledge thinking, I don't need to tell her any more about this task because she's just going to instinctually know what I know when it comes to washing my car. And that's very much not a thing all the time. Another example is, you ask your mate to pick up some food and you assume, like you say, hey, I want you to pick up some Chinese food, right? And you assume that she's going to pick it up from the place that you always go to on your lunch break when you're going to work, and that she's going to actually look up which ones are safe or have like an A+ rating versus ones that have a B or C rating, or one that recently was in the news for some like rat infestation. And she goes and picks it up from the place that had the rat infestation. And you're like, why would you do that? Like, didn't you know this place almost got shut down last week because of the rats that were in there? And you're thinking, again, she should have had that knowledge because you know it, and therefore she must also now know it. And so these are the kind of things that cause a lot of conflict. I actually want to show you a really funny video that I came across today. I was randomly scrolling through YouTube and I found this clip from the show called Let's Make a Deal. It's a game show. And there's a couple that gets called to the front of the stage. And well, I'll just let you go ahead and see it. Let's take a look at it real quick.
Last deal before the big deal of the day. I need a couple. You two, come over here. Steve and Jesse. Hey, Steve, how are you? Hey, Jesse. I love your outfits. Now, is this prom circa the 70s or early 80s?
By the way, I don't know why they chose those costumes, but they are like decade accurate. That looks like something out of Grease almost.
We drove here in a 1974 bus, Volkswagen bus.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, how long have you guys been together?
About 6 months.
That's it? It's new. Oh, it's newish.
We're friends. We're just friends, but he wants it.
Can we talk about this not in front of everyone, Jesse?
I'm single.
It's complicated.
I'm single, guys. I'm single.
What?
Oh, no. We're really good friends.
So we have this. So this is...
Wayne Brady knew when to move the heck on, right? Oh my God, I felt so bad. I was laughing so hard. I was so sad for this guy because, like, so here he is thinking, I'm on a game show. I'm with this girl that I've known for a while, and so yeah, we're a couple and this and that. And then she hits him with the okie doke, like, oh, we're actually friends. Like, he wants it to be something, but I'm just here for friendship, right? And I'll get more into how that's a disconnect in a minute. But let's watch the rest of this clip.
So we have this family photo. So good job.
So the part I skipped over was they go through the prizes. The first prize is like a zonk, and it's like a meat tray or something like that. So they didn't pick that. So now they're going on to like get the actual prize.
Dodge that meat-filled zonk, which is also the band that's going to be playing the prom later on. So we'll give you $1,000 or keep your curtain.
Curtain, right?
Well, you both got to agree.
Curtain.
How about $2,000?
Ooh.
One for you, one for me.
And because you're not really together, it just makes sense to split it.
I know, right? Exactly.
Let's do the curtain.
Curtain.
Did you see the hurt look on it? Let me go back a little bit. You see the hurt look on his face when he had to say that? Exactly. Right there. That's a guy that's like, I thought we were together, but we're not. I'm confused, and I'm trying to keep it together on TV, but oh my God, like, she just said that we're friends and not actually in a relationship. Like, this is awkward for me because I'm just learning this for the first time. So sad.
Curtain.
Tiffany, what's behind curtain one?
It's a trip to Mexico.
Imagine that, winning a trip to Mexico with your female best friend that you actually want to be dating, and you're going to be sharing a room together. How fun would that be? Not very, right?
You guys are gonna have a blast
As friends.
in the same room. She said, we're amigos, amigos. You guys enjoy that trip. It's over $6,000. It's gonna be great. Steve, a pleasure meeting you. Jesse, thank you so much.
It just hurts so bad because, like, I'm sure if you're a guy watching this, you've experienced that, right? Like your high school, college days, you had woman friends that you befriended thinking, okay, if I spend enough time with her and, you know, we go out and hang out as friends and we go to restaurants with just each other, we go to movies together, she's going to eventually feel that I'm doing more for her than I would do for other women. And she's going to realize that, oh, that must mean that I like her. And she's going to recognize that she likes me too, and we'll be together, right? So this is a perfect example, though, of the curse of knowledge. Because here's the thing. One thing about knowledge is that not everybody has the knowledge that you have, and not everybody's running and operating on the same systems that you've grown to operate on. Men very much work in a construct whereby if we're doing something for somebody else, we're exerting our time, energy, effort, and money, then amongst other guys, we know without having to say it, that means we're actually trying to build a connection with that person. We're trying to build a friendship. And this isn't going to be just a one-time thing. We assume the other guy knows if I'm giving my time and resources, inevitably, they're going to start giving their time and resources as well, right? And so then we go into our relationships with women, and even if we just like meet them on day one, right? We're thinking the same thing. Well, okay, on day one, sure, I'm not going to try to like romance her right away, but as we spend time together, as I spend money on her and effort and energy, even though we're just being in a friendship, she's going to eventually realize that all these efforts are really because I'm trying to get extra close to her. And if I'm trying to get extra close to her, it must mean I want to be in a relationship. And she's going to understand that and get that. And unfortunately, women work in a different construct than we do. And so they're on a thing where like they've been taught to socially treat everybody nice and everybody great and to like be cordial to everybody. And they're at times cordial to people that they're interested in, but they can also be equally as cordial to a guy that they're just getting to know or a guy that they're just in a friendship with, and it not have to ever translate to I'm doing all these things because I want to be in a relationship. It could just be I care for you immensely as a friend, but that does not mean that I want to go to bed with you. And this is an example of where communication starts to clash, because you have one side, which is the guys that have their version of knowledgeable things that just as guys, we know these things mean this thing, and it must mean that for women also. And the women have their stuff of, well, when I do or say these things, it actually means these things. And men obviously are going to understand that, right? And both sides are losing because we're both coming to the table with sets of knowledge that don't work well for the opposite sex. Because understand, the experiences that we have as men are, in terms of how we're raised in society, are vastly different in many, many ways to the ways that women are. And so the knowledge, quote unquote, that we have is solely based on our experience and things that we've been through and discussions that we've had amongst ourselves and each other, right? Well, women have a completely different set of life experiences that they're learning things from, on top of they have estrogen versus we have testosterone. So that brings an emotional element that most guys aren't going to have any knowledge about, that women have all the knowledge about, all right? So I want to go into how does this curse of knowledge situation actually affect your communication? Because here's the thing, the curse of knowledge can hinder effective communication, and it can lead to many misunderstandings or misinterpretations, all right? And it can also be a challenge for you as a person that has a certain kind of knowledge to be able to teach or pass that on. And I get a lot of comments from guys and a lot of messages from guys saying things like, well, women just need to understand X, Y, and Z, and I find this so simple, how can she not get it? And in doing that, you're not looking at the fact that just because you have a certain set of knowledge that you find to be logically or analytically logical, that doesn't mean A, that it's always right, and B, that doesn't mean that the woman's, what she's bringing to the table and how she's operating is faulty either. It just means that it's different, and you need to understand why that is. So let's get into how does the curse of knowledge affect your relationship. I'm gonna go through 6 ways that curse of knowledge affects your situation and your relationships, all right? So the first way that the curse of knowledge affects your relationships is that it is going to cause you to make a lot of assumptions about things that your partner should know, right? So for example, you might be a guy that's very good at planning a vacation. You know, it's like for you, it's simple because guys are very, very, very good at planning things. So it's like, it's very simple. You book the airplane on this day, you book the hotel on this day, you look at where you're going to go to and figure out what restaurants are in the area. And then you look up what kind of like 3 or 4 amusement things that are around there. Boom, you got a trip. It's simple, plain, it's easy, said and done, right? So then you come to a thing within a relationship where you're like, you know what, babe? I'm always planning these vacations. I would love for you for once to plan this whole thing out. And you're giving her that task because you're thinking it's so easy for you to do that she should also have the knowledge. You're assuming it's not that hard to plan a vacation, right? And then vacation day comes, she ain't picked out a restaurant, or she picked out a restaurant but didn't know to make reservations at it. She picked out a hotel but didn't look to see like it's actually in the worst part of town you could possibly go. She looked up a particular theme park for you guys to go to, but she didn't look out fast passes, or she didn't look out if the place had a lot of rides versus just like stage shows and stuff like that. And you're always thinking like, how'd she plan such a bad vacation? It's not that hard to plan a vacation. But that's because you made an assumption based on how easy it was for you to plan vacations that it should therefore be obvious to her. Or another thing, like dealing with money. Some of you guys out there are absolutely great at being able to budget and plan. And then you're getting with somebody and you're thinking, well, it's going to be easy for them to also budget and plan stuff. And then you get mad when they can't do it. Matter of fact, perfect story. My dad knew how to pay bills, but he would get exasperated each month at having to pay bills. And for my mom, it was very, very simple. But he thought because it was so hard for him to do that he didn't want to dump that task onto her because he thought it's going to be too hard. I don't want her to get stressed out, yada, yada, yada. And she had to sit him down and say, look, I'm good with money. I work at a bank. I know how to deal with this. I will deal with the bills every month. When they come in, just give me the envelope and I will pay it. And that's actually a great thing because they were able to have that communication. But for the longest time, my dad was stressing over paying some bills because he didn't have a system set in place as good as my mom's system ended up being, But that's, again, he assumed that she wouldn't want to do a thing because it was hard for him. Since he didn't have the knowledge, how would she possibly have the knowledge? So that's one way that you get tripped up, is that you're going to be making a lot of assumptions, both good or bad, about your partner. A big one is stuff happening in the bedroom. Like if you're a guy that's like, I'm freaky as heck, I'm down to do anything, anytime, any place. I'll try anything at least once. Then you're assuming by default that your partner, whoever you get with, it's going to naturally be like that, because why would they be apprehensive? And I've unfortunately been a person that has dated women that I thought were going to be like that. And then kind of find out they don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. They initially did this thing, but then didn't really want to do it. And I'm sitting there like, I had one woman that I dated one time that didn't want to wear lingerie. And I'm like, it's just me and you in the bedroom. This does not make sense. I don't know how she came to feel uncomfortable doing that. I just know that my knowledge base at the time was like, this is some bull crap. I don't want to deal with it. So you got to really look into what kind of assumptions are you making about your partner, about things that they should know how to do or things that they should be knowledgeable of based on what things you are currently coming to the table with. Because a lot of times you're going to find that that's not always the case, and it can be frustrating, right? And I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Anyway, the second way that the curse of knowledge affects your relationships is that it becomes very easy to come off as condescending and uncaring simply because they don't know something that you do, okay? I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I was dating somebody that was way younger than me. Like I was in my 30s and she was in her mid-20s. And so I was already aware of if I make references to certain musical things that she might not get it. And so I would make it a point to try to make really current, up-to-date references when I'm trying to reference things that are similar to a song I'm thinking of. And her answer would still be like, I don't know what that is. What song is that? What artist is that? Never heard their stuff. And at that point, I was smart enough to not be, I'm not the guy that's like, you don't know a thing when I'm going to berate you. Because I used to date people be like, I'd say, there's a lot of black movies out there that in the black community, people are like, you should have seen this movie. And so it'd be like, oh, have you seen Juice or Minister Society? And I grew up in a house where my mom didn't curse and didn't allow us to watch movies with cursing. So I'd be like, I don't know, I've never seen it before. And the response would be like, oh my God, how have you not seen this thing? And I never liked that reaction because I'm like, again, I don't have that knowledge base because of how I grew up. I wasn't exposed to this particular movie. So get off my freaking back, because I could probably list at least 4 or 5 artists or songs or albums that you haven't heard before, and you wouldn't want me ragging on you about it. But to the point, So yeah, so in those moments, it could have been very easy for me to be like, you don't know that artist? Oh, I'm older than you, and I see know all these songs. How do you not know? Blah, 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 blah. But how does that make the other person feel? It makes them, they already feel kind of weird on the fact that they don't know the thing that you're talking about. And now you're going to double down on that and make them feel worse about it, or get cranky with them about it, or, have a flipping attitude like, oh, I guess you don't know about anything and blah, blah, blah. Like, are those actions that are loving to your partner? It is not. So when those kind of things come up, you have to be very cognizant that your partner, as much she could have been like a full-on scholar, went to law school, went to medical school, learned all the things in book stuff in terms of like that side of stuff. But just like you wouldn't want her ragging on you for not knowing these medical terms or these law terms, she might have missed out on some things as a result of her trying to study to better herself. And you ragging on her should not be the result of that. But again, that kind of thing can happen as a result of having the curse of knowledge, whereby you are so knowledgeable, you come off as like almost darn narcissistic for saying, you don't know this thing. Okay, I guess I'm better. Like, don't do that. All right. Anyway, the third way that the curse of knowledge can negatively affect your relationships is it's very easy to become frustrated due to what you perceive as a lacking of knowledge that, quote, everyone has, and this is especially true for guys, because in guy world, I get so many comments and messages where a guy saying, for example, I did a video about pull away test, right? Where I say sometimes women will pull away because you're doing too much too soon. It makes them feel like you're too needy and it's too much pressure to be in a relationship. And they just need time to back off for a little bit to either reconnect with themselves or to reset this thing so she can get back to the basics and maybe give you time to not give her the appearance of you being so needy. And so many guys on under the video say like, well, that's not a thing. And they just need to tell me straight up if they want me or not, blah, blah, blah. And if they don't this and that, and they should just know not to play with my feelings. And I try to explain that these women are not playing with your feelings. They are built a different way. And when they're trying to build a connection with you, anything that feels like a forced thing or feels like you're having to make them a decision is going to make them uncomfortable. And that a woman that really, really likes you will pull away if at any moment you start applying too much pressure, But that's because how they're raised and then the chemicals they have in their body is different from men who are very much like, as soon as I see a thing, I want it and I'm going to claim it. And you would do that all day with women and say that that's you being yourself, but that's not going to get you the results you want. But the point is, men say and do that stuff because they're frustrated. They're like, how is it that I already know after 3 dates that I want her as my girlfriend and she still can't figure it out? She's playing games. And again, their process for being able to get to a place where they trust themselves enough to trust that they're making a good decision about you takes a little bit longer. But if you're not aware of that and you allow this curse of knowledge thing to get to you, then you're going to always be frustrated because you're going to get with great women and you're going to, after 2 or 3 dates, start pressuring them to make this a thing, or you're going to start texting them too much and calling them too much. And then you're not going to understand why they're backing away. You just know it's another woman playing games, and you're going to have that happen to woman after woman after woman. And you're going to continue to be frustrated and say women are just crazy, this and that, versus just getting better knowledge. Because right now, the curse of knowledge here is that you're going off of knowledge that you think should work based on what you've learned up to this point. But I've been in this for a long time. I can assure you there is knowledge that if you have it about women and about the dating process and about how they actually function, that makes them want to get in a relationship. If you have that knowledge, then being more patient becomes a lot easier and less frustrating. If you want to learn that, you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com and sign up for coaching. Anyway, the fourth way that the curse of knowledge affects your relationships is it causes you to dismiss her life experiences and perspectives on things. Women are going to always come to the table in relationships with a different perspective. Now, they might have some things that like are similar in your perspective on certain things, but again, they're coming with a more emotional logic base, and we're coming with more analytical logic base. Sometimes, guys, with our analytical logic, we miss out on important emotional logic that we would need in order to better function and operate. When you tell a woman, oh, you're just all in your feelings about something, or that's not a thing, or you need to get up, you need to stop crying, like, all you're doing is being dismissive of her, and you're dismissing a perspective that could actually be a great benefit to you in your life. If you're trying to do any kind of job with people or start your own business or do sales or just interact with your family members, right? Like, you need to be able to know what emotional bases and what experiences they're coming from. So you're not just being the guy that's like, well, don't you think that things should be this way? Or don't you think you should think this way about this and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, they don't. They have their own experience. And I hate when people do that. Guys, I'll tell you this now. Get this out of your vocabulary, right? Stop going up to women and saying, well, don't you think? Because what you're doing is saying, you should think just like me on this thing. So don't you think that women should do X, Y, and Z? Well, you're already showing your bias in that. And it'd be better for you to say, well, what's your opinion on this thing or this approach or whatever? Because then they'll feel more open to be honest with you. But when you come to them and say, well, don't you think about this? And don't you think about this like this? It's a trap, because if she gives you an answer that's opposite of that, then you're going to get mad about it and be butthurt because she's not coming from the same knowledge base. And you need different points of view in your life. Like, honestly, like, people need different points of view to get outsiders' perspective of things and see angles of situations that maybe you wouldn't have seen on your own, right? So all that to say, with the curse of knowledge, you're going to think that your position is so right that and hers is so wrong that she must be absolutely crazy. She's out of her gourd. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And you inadvertently end up getting rid of a perspective that could be useful to you. The fifth way that the curse of knowledge affects your relationships is it curtails effective communication, especially if or when using shorthand for things. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a conversation earlier this week where I was explaining, I talk a lot about this stuff outside of this, me doing this to you guys, where I'm trying to talk to people about the ins and outs of dating and things. And I'll talk about like the dating sphere at large and what different content creators are making. And there's this term that's called pick me. And I was explaining like women that agree with men in terms of like, yeah, I agree that, men sometimes get the short end of the stick, or that women don't always listen, yada, 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 that they get called pick-me's. And then recognizing that this person did not necessarily know what that is, I just said, okay, yeah, pick-me is, or they call that a woman that is like basically doing things that are pleasing to men in order to get picked as a girlfriend or a wife. Like, that's what it means, right? But imagine if I'd been in a conversation like, oh, you don't know what a pick me is? Like, oh, that's such, I mean, can't you tell from context clues what a pick me is? Like, pick me, like be picking me, whatever. Like, again, not everybody's going to have or know what the terminology you're using means. If you're in a technical field, we're using, initials and stuff for things all day. You might get home and say, yeah, this BBS and this 124 thing, they're not going to know what that means. For the longest time, I didn't know what a 187 was. Like, I'm listening to Snoop Dogg and Dre rap about a 187, and I'm like, why that number? And it took me years to figure out, like, oh, that's the murder code. I didn't know that. So somebody new coming into rap, they're hearing 187, for me to be like, oh, can't you figure out what 187 means? Like, that's such an obvious thing. Like, listen to but again, I would do that if I was somebody that was able to forget what it felt like back when I didn't have that knowledge. And I think a lot of guys forget about, there was a time period where the knowledge you have now, you didn't have. The time period where you were learning this shorthand for the first time, you didn't know what they were talking about when they were saying initials and things and phrases or giving these like insider jokes that you weren't yet privy to. So you got to give the woman you're with the same grace. You might come to her and say some random phrase and you're thinking it's an old fashioned phrase from like down south. And she's like, I'm from the North, or I'm from Canada, or I'm from Europe. Like, oh, perfect example of that would be like, if somebody was like, hey, man, like, I'm going to watch some football. You want to watch football? And you're thinking, oh, man, I can't wait to see like, Brady and them throw the football around. And then it ends up being like a soccer match because your friends from Europe and they forgot that, oh, yeah, here, like football is actually called soccer. But they need to have that knowledge base in order to like not mess that up, So it's the same thing. Women are going to come in, and just like there's going to be some things that she says, you're going to be like, I don't know what she's talking about. You all both need to get together and say, look, there's going to be times when we say some stuff and do some shorthand that the other one doesn't know. Just explain it. Don't try to like make fun of them for not knowing it or whatever. Like, I just don't know if I want to learn it, but I don't want to be chastised for not knowing it in the moment, And then the sixth way that the curse of knowledge can impact your relationships is it can cause you to not meet her emotional needs because you're basing what she needs on what works for you. Perfect example, as a guy, if I get frustrated or if I'm going through like, a tragic incident involving my family and friends or whatever like that, I need to go to my man cave. I need to go to the Zelda cave because I'm playing Zelda right now. And I need to just sit there and be by myself and just play and process. And so because that's what works for me, I could very easily go to a woman I'm dating and say, well, she's going through something. And my thought's like, you know what? She seems to be really going through it. I'm going to leave her alone. Now, some of you guys might be chuckling and thinking, that's so stupid, like, Harry, like, why would you do that? And it's because you're chuckling because you're like, most women, they want camaraderie when they're going through something. And so, yeah, for you to be like, you're going to want some alone time. No, she's going to want to talk it out. She's going to want to hug. She's going to want to cry it out. She's going to want to be around you and like have somebody that's able to like feel the emotions she's feeling, or just she can get her emotions off on without judgment. And so you might inadvertently think, well, the way I process things, the way that I do things, the way I handle situations is totally fine for me. So I'm going to make that be a thing for her. Another thing guys do is they are purposely dismissive. If your guy friend comes to you and says, man, I'm going through a thing, blah, 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 your job as a dutiful guy friend is to say, dude, that's not a thing. You're going to get over it. It's no big deal. Hey, let's go to my man cave and play Zelda or play ping pong or whatever, and let's not have you think about this. Because in guy world, we don't want to concentrate on a problem. We want to ruminate and have something to distract us. And in the process of being distracted, we figure it out. And then your woman comes to you and says, I got a problem with this girl, Susie's, blah, blah, blah. And what do you want to do? Sue, that's not a thing. That's no big deal in the grand scheme of things. Like, that's nothing. You need to not pay attention to that because you're thinking it's going to help. And your knowledge base says that this is the proper way to help somebody out is to distract them from their problem. And then your woman's all mad at you and you're wondering what's going on. And it's because you're like, I was going through a problem. You just dismissed me and told me to go away. Because it's different. Because how we, each side of the spectrum here, the men and women handle things is oftentimes very different. And even to that, let's say you do have a woman that is like, when she gets mad or upset, she needs her alone time. Well, you might be going into the assumption that all women want to be with somebody and talk to somebody when they're going through stuff. So you might do the opposite and try to make her talk. And she's like, I don't want to talk. I want to be left alone. And so this is why the best way to curtail all these things is to have communication. At the first point where there's a communication mess up, or there's a thing that you said that you didn't mean it a certain way, but she took it a certain way or vice versa, have that conversation. Say, hey, you got to be the one to initiate it. Say, hey, babe, you know what? My bad on the thing, but like we're getting to know each other and I'm just trying to figure out your communication style and what you need in these things. So let's talk about it. What do you need when you're going through a hard time? You need to talk about it. You need to be left alone. You need to go with your girlfriend someplace. Like, let's figure this out. And each time you have a miscommunication, before it gets too bad, say, stop and say, wait a minute. I sense some miscommunication happening. So let's backtrack. Like when you're saying this thing or doing this thing, like I assume you care for me and it's not your intention to say things that hurt me or whatever. So like what's going through your head as you're saying this or as I'm doing this, what are you feeling? Those kind of conversations can help you really solidify better like how your partner actually is and what they're actually thinking versus what you think. Because here's the other thing too. Depending on the experience, you both are going to have different perspectives on what the knowledge is. Like you guys have a knowledge of a thing, for example, right? But it could be coming from two different place points. For example, the song that I clapped earlier, what was the song, people? You can't touch this, right? Well, okay, if I just hum this out, if I just hum out to you, and then I say, what song is that? Now, my knowledge base says that it's MC Hammer's You Can't Touch This, but it could also very well be Rick James's Super Freak, which is what it's sampled from. It could also be Nicki Minaj's Super Freaky Girl, which also samples Rick James's tune. So even though we both know and have a knowledge idea of what I'm humming, the reality is, depending on what we are exposed to or what decade we come from or what our particular genre of music is that we like to prefer, even that in and of itself could be different depending on where we're coming from. Because you might be a rock person that's never heard a rap song. You don't know who Nicki Minaj is. You don't know who MC Hammer is. Or you could be a person that only heard like recent rap because you were born like 10 years ago. You don't know who Hammer is. You don't know who Rick James is, but you know who Nicki is. And so that's your base of knowledge based on your exposure up to this point. So all this to say is that recognize that a lot of times in your relationship, when you're getting frustrated about things that your partner just should get or should know or should be doing, it really is because you're running on the thought of this is how I function and this is how I operate and this is how I do things. This is the things that I know. And why doesn't this other person know that? And honestly, the reality is life has so much to offer and so much to expose us to. We can't be exposed to it all. We can't all run across it in our journeys. And so your woman up to this point has a certain knowledge base that she's gotten to prior to you. It's at this point that she meets you that she can expand that knowledge base if you're willing to do that in a way that is loving and caring and that she's open to. But if you're going to tease her every time she doesn't know a thing, or you're going to berate her every time she's thinking about things in a way that you don't think about it, or you tell her to do a task and she does it differently than you intended, but you didn't give her the exact directions of what you meant when you said the task that you wanted to do, then you're going to be frustrated a lot of the time, dude. And I want you guys to have great relationships. That means that you're going to have to realize that there's going to be times where you're going to want to say that snide comment when you say, hey, babe, you want to go see such and such an artist? Oh, who's that? And you're like, they got the #1 song on the chart right now. How does she not know who this is? Curtail all that sarcasm back and just be like, oh, well, okay, you don't know who that is? Okay, it's so-and-so and this such and such. Boom. You do that, Now she knows, and you ain't got to be frustrated, and she ain't got to feel weird for not knowing it, and you guys can keep the peace and have good communication, because ultimately, you don't want the curse of knowledge to cost you your relationship, all right? So hopefully, guys, all that helped out with that particular section of this show. So now that we've done that, I will go ahead and answer questions from you guys. I also have questions that I pulled up that I'm going to be answering in the course of the show. But first, let me get this drink real quick. This show is brought to you by water. All right, so I have a few questions that I got over the course of the week, but first I'm going to answer a question that is in the chat. So we have a question in the chat, and this guy's, I assume it's a guy, Zakia. I assume it's a guy. So if not, forgive me. So, but anyway, so this person has a question in the chat, and their question is, what to do when a girl comes back from no contact? Well, the reality is, when a woman comes back from no contact, what that means is this, is that initially, if she pulled away, it meant that you were probably doing too much, you were being too needy, or she was feeling pressure to make this a relationship. And so rightfully so, ideally, you scaled back also and gave her time to like be with herself, to be not around you, and to really reassess her feelings and see where she's at, right? So at the point where she comes back, what that is signaling is that she's starting to build interest again, and she's now she's been able to see that you're not as needy and desperate as maybe she thought you were going to be. And so now she's sneaking back in to see if she can get another chance at this, to see if maybe it's going to go back to you being the fun guy versus like maybe you were a little too pressuring and that made you not so fun of a guy as a result of her pulling away, right? The worst thing you can do when a woman comes back from no contact is to try to go over the things that made her leave in the first place. Like some guys will be like, hey, so before we reconnect again, I just want to know, like, why'd you leave and what was I doing? And how could we be like, no. We're not taking it back to that. She came back. She's trying to come in and act like nothing happened. Let it be like that. Like the reality is she's coming back. She's the one initiating contact, but now you have a chance to turn this ship around. So if she's coming back, what you don't want to do is fall into the habits that made her want to leave in the first place. So this means things like, for example, initiating text, right? For every 3 texts she initiates, you initiate 1. So we don't want you ever like over initiating text, and we don't want you over texting, meaning we don't do double text. We don't do long paragraphs of text. If she sends you a message, your message should be no more than like 3, maybe 4 sentences tops. But like at the point where you get to that 3rd or 4th line, not sentences, 3 or 4 lines tops. At the point where you get to that 4th line, you're starting to push it. And so psychologically, it starts to look like, oh, he's trying to say a lot because he's trying to impress me because he really likes me a whole lot. Like, no, leave it short and sweet. Also, your texting should really only be to ask her on dates. Like real talk, you can really bypass a lot of the problems that you have with a woman pulling away by cutting back on your texting and only specifically initially initiating to ask for dates. Now, if you meet her on a dating app, obviously you're going to banter a little bit, and then you're going to at some point say, hey, this is a great conversation. We should like meet up. At the point that you meet up with her though, your texting should go straight to you're only texting her either if she initiates it and you have a little bit of small banter and then say, hey, I got to go, but we should go out sometime. Or if you're initiating and saying, hey, hope you're having a great day, we should go out sometime. Like all your texting should be is to get her on a date, all right? And you'll find that by pulling back on texting a little bit, you can now not come off as needy and desperate because you're not constantly reaching out to her, which is going to make it her decision to contact you, which means in effect, she's chasing you. And as I always say, if she's chasing you, she can't be replacing you. But if you're coming too hard to her, she will definitely replace you, all right? So hopefully that helps you out. All right, let's get into some of these other questions that I've got over the course of the week. So I did a live last week where I mentioned in that live, this guy wrote asking why is it that romance can't be a surprise for guys? Like, why can't we be romanced in that first 3 months and yada, yada, yada. And so I said that as a guy, unfortunately, romance can't be a surprise. You need to plan meticulously everything out in the beginning because women are going to build better trust for you if you plan dates they go through successfully, and she's able to see like, oh, this guy knew how to take care of me on this date. He was able to plan an activity that he knew I'd find fun, that was safe, that made me feel like adventurous and like a woman. Like, yeah, that all helps build up trust and makes them feel more feminine towards you and makes them start building a faster attraction to you. So there was a woman that commented under that video, and her response was, no lie. The first thing that alerted me to my husband's potential was how he planned out our first date. We were set up by friends, but he still called me up to formally ask me out, and over the next couple of weeks, texted me about my preferences and planned out several activities accordingly. In the end, all the plans fell through or changed last minute, but the fact that he put in that much effort for what was actually meant by us to be a platonic date struck me as extremely considerate and sweet. After that, we talked every day for a few months until he took me on a second date, long distance, and formally asked me to be his girlfriend by Nerdy Cypher. I'm going to assume that's like a talk platform. I don't know what that is. But anyway, so what's this woman saying? She's saying, yeah, this dude who I was just going to go on a date with his friends, like he planned out the whole thing, and it got my wheels thinking about, gosh, this could be like a great guy to actually date because he's already putting in the work and effort to show me that he's willing to put in the plans. Which means I can just show up and be my pretty feminine self. And that's all women want to do in those first few months of dating. They want to show up. They want to smell good. They want to look good. They want to go through the hassle of doing the girly things like picking out what shoes to wear on this new date or what new outfit to wear. Or if it's an old outfit, making it look as pressed as possible so it looks new to you, or what perfume to wear, or what lipstick and makeup. Like, these are all the things that women are dying to do. But what most men are doing is saying to the woman, hey, so what do you want to do on a date? You should tell me what you want to do. Hey, why don't you plan out what our date should be? And then that way I know that you like the date, and then I'll take you. And women don't care about that. Women just care about, I want to be as feminine as possible. I might have a job where I'm at the office all day having to plan and stuff and work meetings like a dude. When I'm not at the job, I don't want to be a dude. I want to be a woman that goes out and is able to be womanly. And I want my guy to take over the guy role and plan stuff. And as you can see, the results, they're married now. They're married happily. Oh, also note though, notice it says here, they talked for a few months until a second date. So no, because I tell you guys try to rush, like, I need to date her every single day or see her all the time and text her all the time. And so granted, they were talking every day, but they were also long distance. But like they went on a date at some point, and then it took a few months until a second date, a few months, right? So I try to trust you guys. Women that have high interest in you, you ain't got to see them every day for them to keep that like and interest. But you can risk flame out if you are effectively trying to date her every single day, because that becomes a situation where it feels to her as though you're already locking her down, even though she hasn't quite had the time to figure out if she even wants that and wants to be locked down with you specifically, you know? But I want to read this lady's message because like it really proves the point that ultimately, guys, you are going to be best at being able to plan things and make sure that she's having a great time on those first few dates. And trust me, the results will come. So I want to read that. All right. And speaking of that video, I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, I'll get to it now. So on that same video, the romance can't be a surprise video. This guy said, because again, I say, you got to plan the dates. You got to make sure that you're showing a good time, yada, yada, yada. I said, for the first 3 months, you got to be the guy to do that. And somehow this guy read that as like not being your authentic self. So he said, so basically act like someone else until she likes that person and then reveal your real self. Another word for this is lying. And yet even another word for that comes to mind is being a pussy, basically. And it's interesting that anytime men, well, let me not be a general list here, okay? Basically, but there are a lot of men that feel as though if they're doing something to try to get women that's up to this point out of their nature to do, that it means that they're lying to women and not being their real self. And I think the best quote I've ever heard from the movie Hitch, which that movie is suspect, but the movie had a great line, which is like, who you are is a very fluid thing. If you could be your authentic self and get women, then the reality is how you were at age 2 should be perfectly fine in terms of how you get women. Like how you acting at 2 years old, ranting and crying and screaming and all that stuff will be perfectly acceptable when it comes to trying to get women. But the reality is we evolve, we learn new things, we learn what is positive about ourselves, and we learn things that could use work and that aren't helping us. And in the dating realm, you being a guy that doesn't want to plan stuff and wants to always ask her what she wants to do on a date, I'm sorry to say, that could be your authentic self. It's not going to get you a lot of women because women want a guy that is comfortable with making plans and comfortable with not asking her opinion on every single little thing that he's trying to plan to do. Okay. And so you have to get out of your head this idea that how you currently are now is the only way you're ever going to be. It's not. How I dated at 25 and how I dated at 41 are two drastically different things, because I have more knowledge base now, more experience of what it means and what it looks like to be in an authentic relationship that's going to be functional. Versus back then, yeah, I wanted to care for the girl, but I also wanted to get my rocks off, and I also wanted to possibly see how many I could possibly do, and I wanted to make sure that the woman was there for my esteem. Like there's various different reasons in your different stages of life as to why you're dating, and you're operating based on how you're trying to date and the reasons behind that, right? So the idea of like, well, I'm acting like somebody else because I don't want to ask her to plan, but that's the nice guy thing to do. But is that benefiting you? And is it benefiting her? Because if you're doing something that's authentically you to try to get women, meaning women are your consumer, right? And you're telling the consumer, well, the way I'm going to get you is I'm going to ask you what you want to do on these dates. And they're at large, women are saying, I don't want to do that. And you're like, but that's who I am, blah, blah, blah. You're going to lose. So do you want to lose, or do you want to do what's going to get you women? Something to consider. Let's see, scrolling down these things. Like I said, guys, the show is about you. So if you have any questions you want to ask me during the course of this show, you are definitely welcome to do so. This person had a comment on my TikTok. I have a TikTok account as well. And so I did a video where I said, I did a snippet from the live I did last week where I answered the question of why asking her what she's looking for is pointless. Because a lot of you guys, you're thinking, this is where guy logic gets you in trouble, guys. You're thinking, okay, I want a woman, but I want something that's long-term. How do I know if she wants long-term? I know what I'll do. On that first or second date, I'm going to ask her, so what are you looking for? Are you looking for a long-term relationship? Are you looking for a short-term relationship? Are you looking for just a friends with benefits hookup? Like, what are you looking for? And then we think logically, if I ask her that question, she's going to say, you know what? I hadn't thought about it, but I think I want a short-term. And then you're going to respond, that's great. You know what? I thought I want something long-term, but I could do a short-term in the meantime. Yeah, let's do that. That to me is like the stupidest thing ever. But again, because we're talking about the curse of knowledge, I understand why. At one point in my life, I'm sure I was probably thinking like, okay, how can I tell the difference between like a girl that wants to just hook up with me and that be it versus like be in a relationship? I get it, because you're thinking that's the logical thing, right? Like just like it's like on a platter. Which of these options do you want to do? And I'll do it, right? But here's the thing. So this guy said, I feel a way around this is asking on your first date, what are they looking for? Example, long-term, short-term, casual, etc., right? And here's what I try to stress to you guys, is that you're thinking, because you're like this, that you're going to go on 1 or 2 dates, and after 1 or 2 dates, you're going to determine, yeah, I don't know if I date this girl long-term, but I would totally do a short-term with her for a little bit. Like you're assuming, because that's how you're processing how you get with whoever you want to get with, that women are processing it the same way. So you're thinking after 1 or 2 good dates, she's already made the decision. This guy, I don't know if I'd see him in a long-term, but I could do this little short-term hookups, or I don't know if I do short-term with him because I really see more as a long-term thing. So I'm gonna like, and this is where I try to explain to you guys, women are coming at dating from a whole different thought process, from a whole different process altogether in terms of how they're going about it. Because you might have a woman that on date 1 says, okay, I'm going to give this guy a shot. Let's see what he has. And that is an offer whereby she has no context yet of what you're going to be. Like she's going to this fully open saying, okay, let's see what this guy has to offer. And then depending on how he makes me feel, we'll go to the next step. And so for women, at least based on my experience, because again, if they're watching this, if I'm wrong, let me know. But in my experience, for women, it's more about steps. Like, okay, he's taking me on a date. He showed me a good time. He's not being too overly gross. He's not trying to touch me too much. He's making me laugh. He's vibrant. You know what? This was a good date. So you know what? If he asked me for a second one, I'd totally do it. That's step number 2. Step number 2, okay, great. We're on this second date now. Okay, he's still bringing up stuff about me, and he's asking me questions, and he's touched me a little bit, but I feel like the touch is really, really nice, and he smells really good, and oh, he's trying to kiss me. Oh, do I want to kiss him? How is the kiss? Okay, you know what? Overall, the feeling of this date, also great. Step 3, oh, now he's trying to make the big moves. He's trying to ask me up to his place to make dinner with me. But I know what that means. He's trying to go for a hookup. But do I want to hook up? How's he going to act if I don't give him this hookup? Well, let's just go over his house and just see what happens. Okay, I'm over here. I'm on his couch. He's feeding me food. We're talking. It's interesting. Like, I'm sexually attracted to him, but he doesn't seem to be trying to push me towards having to sleep with him. Oh, wait, he's making a move. Okay. Let's see what happens if I just reject this move real quick. Oh, he didn't freak out. Interesting. So I don't feel threatened that he's going to try to attack me if I don't want to do some stuff. And now I want to do some stuff. So now, boom. oh, we had a hookup. That's great. Now, do I like that hookup enough to want to do it again? And can I see myself like, so you see, it's all these steps, right? It's not a concrete thing of like, well, we went on 2 good dates. And so now I think I'm going to just put him in the long-term or short-term category or no term at all. It's these feelings are building up each time. Each time he's doing the right stuff, I'm building interest. And now as I'm building interest, I'm starting to realize initially when I first went out with this guy, I thought this was going to be a one and done date and that's it. But each time I'm going out with him, he's making me feel more connected to him and making me feel more things to where I could now feel myself wanting to spend a lot of time with him, which translates to being in a relationship. I guess we're going long term. So in my experience, that's how women are processing it. And they're not processing it like a dude where it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4 dates. Okay, now what are we? And that's why I say you have to go on her timeline, because ultimately you trying to ask her, here's what's going to happen. You're going to ask her on date 3. So you're looking for a long-term, short-term, whatever. And what she's going to think is, wow, he's asking, he's already expressed possibly long-term. This is date 3. I'm still trying to figure out my feelings. I was building up to an interest, but now it's or a higher interest than I already have. But it seems like he's ready to just ask me now. And I'm not quite at that stage. So I got to get off here because he's clearly already infatuated with me. And I feel bad for making him wait longer than he's probably going to want to. And so since I'm a nice person, I don't want to do that to him. So I'm out. And then you lose. And you sit there like, why didn't she just tell me she wanted a short term? And the reality is that's not how women process that in the first place. Now, and it's not to say that there aren't women out there that, don't have these short flings, but most women, at least in my experience, aren't purposely going out there looking for that. Like you might have a woman that's just overall bad in terms of like communication, upbringing, whatever. So she hooks up with dudes and then starts getting all needy and crazy. And then the guys dump her. And then it looks like she's a short-term girl. And really it's just, she hasn't quite figured out on her end of things how to properly keep men around, But like most women are going to these situations automatically thinking, okay, I'm going on the first date with this guy. I've already determined long-term, let's do it. That's not how that works, Anyway, on to the next question here. Let's see what this one is here. I think this is probably from a younger guy, but I want to answer it because I used to have these same thoughts and feelings in high school, so I'm going to answer it. So this guy asked, how am I supposed to ask my friend's girlfriend if she can hook me up with one of her friends so I can have a girlfriend? How do I ask that? And my answer to that is that's not how that works, because it's not like it is in the movies where it's like, your friend's girlfriend introduces you to another girl and all of a sudden it's just like, oh, since we both know each other now, we're now boyfriend and girlfriend. I don't care if it's high school, college, adult world. Process is generally the same, which is like you're going to want to meet a girl, have a conversation with her, take her out, or in this case, if it's meeting through a friend, the very easy thing to do is just to say, hey, to your friend, hey, can you and your girlfriend has a friend I think's really hot. Can you plan something where we all have to be there together, like plan a movie outing or plan a dinner outing or plan like putt golf outing or whatever. We can all just kind of just hang out and have fun. And you make it a very low pressure event, because the reality is you're coming to this already having the hots for this chick, and this chick has no idea that you like her and no idea that you're thinking about her in that way. And for you to go from she doesn't know you to like, hey, we should date and what? Like, it's gonna be too fast. And dudes make the mistake of like moving too fast. That doesn't mean you don't make any moves, but it means you don't go from you don't know this chick to I'm gonna express a full like for you. But you can express interest. You can say, hey, so me, your friend seems cool. My friend, blah, blah, blah. What about us? We should hang out sometime. You start doing those kind of things where you're setting up things to take her out and learn more about her. You should always treat dating women like a research project. Even if you have like a high-end crush, the reality is you do not know this girl enough to have a full-on like for her. So treat every woman you meet like it is a thing to be researched. Oh, you have the tingles for a woman? Great. It just means you now need to do more research on her before you have full-on feelings. Because you could be seeing her from afar and she like look all great and smell all great. And you get on a date, she has a weird voice. She has odd habits that you're not into. She's a devil worshiper. She's like, doing all these things that you're not into. She has a different political or religious view than you. And then you're like, oh, so I just liked her because she was hot. But like, we don't actually have enough in common for me to want to make this be a thing. And you don't know that until you take her out a few times and start asking these questions, start having those conversations. So don't put all this pressure on yourself to have to meet this girl and then try to make it a relationship. But you can say, hey, friend, ask your girlfriend. Let's all hang out and just get some vibes going and see what's what. And then just take it from there. And again, like I tell guys on the show all the time, it takes a woman 2 to 3 months to solidify her feelings. Don't assume if she says yes to a date that she's all in on trying to be your girlfriend. Take it 2 to 3 months. Let her be the one to bring up the "so what are we" question, because you have a better chance of that lasting if she's asking it versus you. So hopefully, guys, it helps you out. All right. Let's see. We got here a couple more questions here. Like I said, guys, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them on this show. You can also always leave comments under my various videos because I go through those each week to find new questions to ask. I do this show every Tuesday. I do this one today at 7 o'clock. Most likely it'll either be 3 o'clock or 7 o'clock, depending on the audience, but like it's every Tuesday. Continuing, this person said, oh, okay, I like this question. So this person asked the question. He said, I just started dating this girl a month ago, and she recently left to another state for a couple of months for work. We agreed to stay in contact, but I'm wondering, how should I approach the situation? Now, let's get into some A game, right? So here's why this is a tricky situation. Because on one hand, you've had a good month together. Clearly, you've been building interest. And so there's always this feeling that if at any time during the course of those first 3 months of dating, if she goes away, whether it's family stuff, vacation stuff, work stuff, right? That one, she's going to lose interest. But number two, if while she's gone, you contact her too much, she could also lose interest, right? So what's a fella to do? Well, here's the thing. What I suggest is this, is that here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to make it a thing where you're forcing her to have communication with you. Because a lot of guys will be like they date her for a month and then she's going to go away. And the guy will be like, well, hey, while you're gone, you should like contact me every day and like, text me every day and stuff and like, do a FaceTime and stuff. Because you're putting that on her because you're thinking, A, you're assuming she already wants to do that, but also you're like, you don't want her to forget about you. And so you're thinking the best way to do that is to tell her up front, hey, we should contact each other all the time, because you're thinking that's what she wants to hear. And I'm here to tell you that's not what they want to hear. Because even if let's say you don't get that, right? And they end up contacting you every single day. Well, at that point, it's her choice. So she's now choosing to contact you without your influence. And that's what we want. Because if you say to her, hey, contact me every day, now you're putting requests on her that if you were her boyfriend already, you could totally put on her. But that's going to now make her feel like you're already locking her down. And as I tell you guys all the time, if she has not gotten there, if she's not come to you explicitly and said, hey, so what are we? Can we be in a relationship? Then you cannot be putting boyfriend requests onto a girl that you're just dating. And so as much as you want to contact her, as much as you want her to reach out to you, the best thing you can do in the situation is say, hey, you're going to be gone for a month. I'm going to miss you immensely. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to each other. If you have time to reach out to me, that's great. If you're totally busy with stuff at work or doing things on the trip, you know what? I totally understand. And I'll see you when you get back. And that makes her feel no pressure. That makes her feel like you're not going to flip out if she happens to miss a day where you don't contact her. And now she's going to be like, that guy, he doesn't seem threatened by me going away. And he's not trying to say I have to contact him. That's so awesome. But now I want to contact him. Now I want to see what he's up to. Why did he not pressure me so much? Does he have other girls in the picture that maybe he's going to be seeing while I'm gone? Well, I don't want that to happen. So you know what? Now I'm going to make it my mission to contact him all the time. And so this is why I tell you guys, you're going to get more of what you want if you don't pressure women to do the things you want them to do. Because you got to give women the free will to choose you. And you're going to find that when you give them that free will, most women don't experience that. Most women experience guys trying to be in their inbox all the time, text them all the time, ask for contact all the time. When you're not the guy to do that, it makes it her choice to now be that person for you. All right. So that's the trick, is that she's going away. Say, hey, I'm going to miss you when you're gone. Like, go do your work thing. If you happen to have time during the course of your thing to contact me, that's great. But if you don't, I understand. And I'll see you when you get back. That's all you got to do. If she's built a high enough interest in you, trust me, the text and the phone calls and the FaceTimes are coming. All right. Anyway, moving on. Let's see here. Okay, I get a lot of texting questions. I have a book at my website called the Texting Commandment, Texting Like a Boss. It's 21 Texting Commandments, and it is designed to help you guys that struggle with texting. Because on here I say, like, obviously you want to text for dates, but there's other things in that book that I go over that can really help you guys get out of this anxiousness and nervousness you feel about, should I text, should I not text, etc. So you can check that out at the website. Click on the products tab. But anyway, so this person asked the question. He says, I'm so glad I stumbled across whatever clip this was. I'm in this situation currently. She's super chatty in person when I see her on the weekends, but I barely hear from her during the week via text. But when she does reply, she says she's keen to hang out next weekend, etc. For context, she hardly ever gets back to her family as well, who I am good friends with. Is the lack of during the week contact a good or bad thing in this context? Well, I don't know how long you've known this person, doesn't say here specifically, but I'm going to lean towards no. I think ultimately, realistically, we have busy lives and jobs and stuff going on. And so I'll say this, a woman that is contacting you during the week, totally great. Definitely a positive sign of high interest, but also recognize that I stress to you guys, the in-person communication is more important of a read to get than the texting. So if she's not texting you during the week, but on the weekends, you're meeting up with her, she's kissing you, she's hugging you, she's doing you, she's cooking meals for you, she's suggesting dates, she's hugging all over you, she's talking about how great of a guy you are, go with that. Because some people aren't texters. When I'm in relationships, I have to be told, hey, text me more. Because I'm really just like, I'll see you in person and love up on you and care up on you. And I don't need to text nobody to care about them. But some people need that. And so that could be a conversation at some point. But if you guys aren't, it's important. If you guys aren't boyfriend or girlfriend yet, then don't have that conversation. Wait until she's getting to that what are we situation. So where you can negotiate, hey, so like for boyfriend or girlfriend, like, am I going to hear from you at least like once a week? Like that'd be kind of nice thing. Like, you can negotiate those terms as part of you being in an official relationship. But I would not take her lack of texting as a negative read if she's doing all the other things right when she's meeting up with you on the weekend. All right. I think that's pretty much it. There's some other stuff that I kind of want to answer here, but I'm going to get into more of that in future shows. So I'll leave some of that other stuff for later. But anyway, so yeah, that's all I got, guys. If you guys have any other questions before I sign off, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, be sure to tune back in next Tuesday. I feel like 7 o'clock is a good time, so I'll probably start doing more of these at 7 o'clock. But yeah, you can leave your comments, your questions and stuff on other videos. And you can also write to me at harrywomenton@gmail.com. If you want to do some one-on-one coaching to really figure out your dating situation and figure out how you can better maneuver in the dating world, I highly recommend going to the website, clicking on the coaching tab, and we can schedule a one-on-one consultation. I also have books, ebooks, audiobooks, programs. I have a couple of music albums that are pretty fun to listen to. All of that stuff's designed to help you date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. All right, guys? So thank you so much for watching today's show. I'm Harry Wilmington, and I will catch you guys on the next episode. I'm out. Peace.
Call this beat Will Smith, cause it slaps hard. Hear it not when I pull up.